Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Voice of Reason. My name is Andy Van Beber, and I'm joined right across the way there with Travis Kirkendall. You know, and we also I got to put it into play. If I said and Travis Kirkendall, yes,
thank you.
yeah.
Too kind.
So yes, I did.
We got sound effects now.
We got a sound effects board now.
We were already tossing ideas to each other, like other sound effects we want. It's going to be great. They might get canceled.
Yeah, but
we're going to have some fun with it.
And I guess we can say we are officially on Baby Watch. The Sean Phillips Baby Watch is on. We got verification. What time was that? I don't know. Let's see. What time?
It was only like an hour ago, I think, right? Or an hour and a half?
Let's see. It was 4:53 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Oh, God, I'm way off. Okay.
Yeah. But we have been we've been on we're on Baby Watch, and if we see anything, we will definitely share as soon as we hear anything. But we are fingers crossed, Baby Watch. I should have said, hey Sean, why don't you do a Zoom with us in the delivery room? Ah! No, but no. Hey man, how was you were telling me you had a long day today. Mr. Kirkendall's been up since 2:30 a.m. That's why the earlier start time. So don't adjust don't look at your clocks. But he said, hey man, can we do an hour earlier? And I'm like, yeah, man. So what were you up at 2:30
Yeah, it does
morning?
Help. My wife is going to Venezuela to see her family, and her flight was early this morning, and so I got her there early, and yeah. And then I went to go work after that. So it's been a fun day. And
so were you
still hit the gym afterwards, and it all worked out.
And you were sleepy on the tower, right?
Yeah. Well, it's a rooftop, so yes.
Oh, well, okay, then it's all right. That's okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
there wasn't much work to do today, so it's pretty easy.
I broke my sleeping in habit this morning, and I had to make a run, made an Uber run to St. Louis this morning, and that was, I'm not used to. Usually, I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning for school and everything, and I got up and I was like, oh my gosh. So when you said, hey, can we do earlier? And I was like, yes, we can. So
get to bed is a good time. Are you a coffee drinker?
No, I used to be a coffee drinker when I first started teaching. And then I got, what's the word? I started having more panic attacks and stuff like that. And when I went to the doctor, he's like, so are you a coffee drinker? And I was like, well, since I started teaching, yes, I am. He's like, stop drinking coffee. And I stopped drinking coffee, and I am now I don't have.
Some people are really caffeine sensitive. So.
Well, and I don't think that I'm, it's not like I'm, totally, I don't know. I can drink Diet Mountain Dew and it not be a problem, but at the same time, I'm like, if I drink too much Diet Mountain Dew, I can be, so I don't know.
You should definitely never try cocaine, is what it sounds like.
Methamphetamines, anything like that. So, but no, this last week, I can say this with absolute confidence, and I'm happy about this, not to be too braggadocious, but last week I finished my summer to-do list of everything that I had set out to do. The last thing was to power wash the house, and I can tell you this, that I was only, on a ladder 10 feet off the ground, but I was hugging. I mean, my legs were literally having intercourse with the ladder. Okay, so I mean, it was just like, oh God.
Why don't you just stop and press that button for yourself and just give yourself a round of applause?
Well, wait. Oh, okay.
Throw it in there.
Here we go. I'll even.
Yeah, there you go. This guy. This guy.
No,
Look at
but
him.
no, again, I don't know. I don't know how you do it. So, no, I was happy to get my, all my stuff done that I was aiming to do. So, but anyway,
Good deal.
we want to thank again Alex Ellison last week for being on with us. He is always a great guest to have, and we had him on last week, and a lot of feedback. I'm not going to go into my rant about. I broke the cardinal rule of internet podcasting when I read the comments this week on our TikToks, and just it's great being called a racist and all this other stuff, but you got to do what you got to do, I guess. But anyway, this week we're going on with part two of this, and we are talking about this. Like I said, 2 weeks ago was a earth-shattering week for the conservative Supreme Court and the things that they passed, and we're going to try to see how much we can get through this tonight. We may get through all of it. We may not get through one of them tonight. But, another decision and I think this is going to hit close to probably more Travis than me, but my wife is part of the union too. But this was the decision. It was Glacier Northwest versus International Brotherhood of Teamsters, Local 174. And this went on, just to give you the background of this case, and it's happened out, and I believe it was Seattle is where this case originated.
Yeah, it was out in
It
Washington.
was in Washington State, 2017 labor dispute. And Glacier Northwest, which is a Seattle concrete manufacturer, when negotiators were, they were trying to reach it, and they could not get to a new deal. And so what ended up happening was the employees walked off the job while their trucks were filled with mixed concrete, and which is mixed concrete is a perishable substance which can quickly becomes unusable, and
There you go.
what ended up happening was, Glacier sued the union in state court, which they said the strike was timed deliberately to destroy its property, the concrete and the trucks. And initially, the lawsuit, I believe, was dismissed in the state court, saying, "Hey, the NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, this is their domain, this is their baby, let them deal with it." And then, so basically, the Supreme Court, actually, from what I understood, the Supreme Court in October of last year, they actually took up Glacier's appeal. So Glacier said, "Okay, we're not going to wait for because the National Labor Relations Board is not going to do anything," and so they appealed, which is called by a writ of certiorari, which is where they appeal. They basically send a brief to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court agreed to look at the appeal. And basically the question was for the court, okay, how is this case going to proceed? Okay, and actually the person who wrote the majority decision for this was Amy Coney Barrett, who is actually one of Trump's appointees, said the lower court was wrong in dismissing the suit and that the Glacier workers' actions were not protected. She goes on by saying, by reporting for duty and pretending as if they were going to deliver the concrete, the drivers prompted the creation of the perishable product. Then they waited to walk off the job until the concrete was mixed and poured in the trucks. In doing so, they not only destroyed the concrete, but also put Glacier's trucks in harm's way. And so you had four of the justices this was a 5-3? Yeah. I believe it
Was
was.
it 5-3? I didn't.
It said four others, so I'm assuming somebody must have not voted. Oh, no, I'll take that back. It was a. Where was it?
I'm trying to find it too.
It was an 8-1. It was an 8-1.
Oh, so it was an overwhelming decision. Okay.
The only person who was Ketanji Jackson, who, again, this was one of Biden's picks, said the decision would erode the right to strike and undermine the National Labor Relations Board oversight of workplace laws. She said workers are not indentured servants bound to continue laboring until any planned Work stoppage would be as painless as possible for their master. They are employees whose collective and peaceful decision to withhold their labor is protected by the National Labor Relations Act of 1935, even if economic injuries result. So, with that being said, um, what do you what and I'll go to you first, Travis, as you are a union member and my wife is, but I want to hear it from you first. What's your initial what's your initial thoughts on this decision as a union member? What's your initial thoughts on this
Well,
decision?
I want to add to not just union member. I grew up in a union
Yeah,
household,
right,
so it's
right. So it's been
my
part.
take on this could be biased. I'm
Mm,
just throwing it out there,
mm-hmm.
but I think it's pretty middle ground here. So I'm looking at this, and now that I've actually know like what happened with this case and know more about the lawsuit, the company, in my opinion, is in the right here, and for the sole reason of what they sued for.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, workers have the right to go on strike. They have that right to um, protest, so to speak, and have that fight with their employer and whoever pays them. We're allowed to do that here. And I am for that 100%. If you can't get your agreements, if you can't get what you want from your union or whatever the contract is, by all means, go on strike. I've seen it, I think, twice growing up, where my dad would go to meetings and they were always talking about going to strike because there was always issues with the agreements. So like they wanted to change I don't know, like if they would change pension, it would affect the insurance. Like there's always a give and take, I've noticed. And even with our own union, like when it comes to when they make changes and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand, I don't know the specifics of what they were striking for exactly. And I didn't pick that up in any articles, it was something to do with their union agreement, to my
Mm-hmm.
knowledge.
Right. I,
Where these guys screwed up is the way they did it, 100%.
oh yeah.
And now I don't know, I've never been involved in a union strike, so I don't know if union reps tell you guys when to do it. I don't know if there's like a planned time when everyone goes on strike and does it. But if it was planned, which they're saying in lawsuit it was, during that time, I mean, yeah, I mean that wasn't the proper way to do it. You got trucks full of concrete, you damage trucks and property. That's not there's a right way and a wrong way to do it.
Right.
And no matter how upset they would have been, that was undoubtedly the wrong way to do it. And it kind of makes me mad because it does put a bad name to unions.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bad look for the union, in my opinion, 100%. And which is unfortunate because we're seeing a decline in union members and union skilled workers, which is really unfortunate. I think the union is for the most part, a really good thing.
Yes.
I can only speak from my experience in the telecommunications industry. And if you're not union, you're making pennies. And that's not
Yeah.
an exaggeration. You're making pennies. Your benefits are trash. You're working in unsafe work conditions. You're working under sketchy employers. Sometimes you don't even get paid. There's a lot of shady stuff that goes on in telecommunications.
I was going
It's
to
a
ask
very
how long
sad industry when it comes to that.
how long has your industry been unionized? With tower climbers and
So my company, before they were MZI, they were a company called Wigdall, and I want to say they went 130. I don't know. The guys I work with started there like 6 or 7 years ago. I want to say they've been part of 134 anywhere from 8 to 10 years. But this is kind of a relatively new thing. They just now started a tower climber union.
so
There,
it is
some
something
guys,
it's something that's relatively new then.
Tower Climber Union, yes.
Mm-hmm.
In a special division of the Electricians Union. We have our own contract under Local 134, which isn't a Tower Climbers Union. It's a Tower Climber agreement in the Electricians Union. So it's a little bit different, but we are paying union members. We pay our dues and get whatever the agreement gives us. But for the most part, to give you some sort of perspective, I can count less than 10 hands, less than both hands. Oh my God, 10 hands. Less than both my hands. So like, yeah, right. Been a long day, folks. I've
Yeah,
been up
that's
since
all right. You're
2:30.
good. You're good.
Seven, maybe companies, six companies, and all of Chicago land that are union for what I do. That's a
Mm-hmm.
large, large market.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very low number for a large market. And I don't know any companies in Missouri that have telecommunications. Most of your telecommunications union companies are in your big markets like Chicago, New York. There's a couple in California I know about, but we're talking ones and twos of companies compared to an industry that's conglomerate. Um, so yeah, they're trying to start a tower climber union. But my point with all that is being like, I've seen what an industry looks like of skilled workers when they don't have a union to represent them. And to paint a little perspective, you've seen videos of what I do and the stuff we do in our job, and some guys they do some insane stuff with this line of
Mm-hmm.
work. I mean, there's other avenues in tower climbing versus what I just do.
Right.
And I can tell you, foreman, which is like your lead guy, a union electrician in Chicago, a journeyman, and local 134, I believe, tops out at $56 an hour. A non-union tower climber foreman in charge of a whole crew, working at heights, working with slings and ropes, and it's a risky job. You're in a harness,
Right.
right?
Right.
The average top out rate for a foreman, you're looking at mid 30s, $35 an hour, and that's with very subpar health insurance. That's with a BS 401k with a 3% match, which is pretty outdated considering most other employers
So
now.
we
If
can
you're lucky, if your company even offers that.
we can agree. We can agree that what, and I'm with you. What these guys did at this concrete plant was wrong.
100%.
But here's where Katanje Jackson, and I can see where she's going with this, and this is where I think people who belong to unions should be concerned. When you and I looked up some stats. So last year, to 2022, against with our inflation going up, the market and everything, strike activity actually spiked by about 50% last year. Okay. According to the Labor Action Tracker by Cornell School of Industrial Labor Relations, said about 224,000 total people walked off the job in 424 strikes, up from 279 strikes in 2021. Most of them were demanding better pay and health care. Along with that, fast food workers with the Fight for 15 campaign, Starbucks baristas organized over 100 strikes. And
Yeah,
education
you're
work.
definitely seeing more industries are trying to
Right.
form
And
unions.
about
It's not
60,
just your
and then in
trades.
education, about 60% of the workers striking in 20. This is what really stood out to me. 60% of the workers striking in 2022 were educators. Okay, and again,
See that?
because and but this is where this is what I am, and we've looked at this before. We've looked at this before when we said, okay, when the court makes a decision on something, one of the things that we always have to look out for is the slippery slope. Okay, so rewind. Okay, so the what was mentioned in the decision was the National Labor Relations Act of 1935. Okay, and you can actually go back to even I forgot the name. The Wagner Act, which was passed in the 20s by Woodrow Wilson, was actually the forerunner to the National Labor Relations Act, which unions called the Magna Carta of the union movement, because at the time, here's what workplaces used to do. If I go back to the late 1800s, early 1900s, they had what was called the I can't think of the it was the Sherman Antitrust Act. So the Sherman Antitrust Act
Hmm.
was originally designed to put and it was designed in the 1800s to put a limit on anything that limited it put limits on anything that restricted commerce, trade, okay, which was like monopolies and trust and all these big corporations and everything. Well, then, starting in the 1900s, when these early unions started to go on strike, what the corporations would do is they would take these unions to court, and under the Sherman Antitrust Act, strikes were deemed to be illegal because it was putting a limit on trade. And so, then starting with the Wagner Act under Woodrow, I believe it was Woodrow Wilson, and then moving forward, And then Franklin Roosevelt, under the New Deal, basically set up the National Labor Relations Act and then the National Labor Relations Board. And this was basically going to say collective bargaining, where the workers get together basically as a union, is not, these guys have the right to a great day's wage, safe working conditions, you know, and benefits. And it's
Mhm.
because of that that you have stuff like your unions, like you have a prevailing wage. You know, you guys
And
have,
let me add to work-life balance.
yes,
And what I mean by that,
better
and
hours, yeah.
100%. I mean, my union typically, you work an 8-hour day. If I work over 8 hours a day, after 8 hours, it's overtime. It's not overtime after 40. It's at that day. And I think that's the way it should be. Because, again, talking about telecommunications, your non-union companies are putting in 14-hour days, Monday through Friday, sometimes longer. It's not unheard of for guys to work 70, 80-hour weeks. And for what? You're working all that just to make what you could make in a 40-hour week, getting paid what you should be getting paid.
Hmm.
It's time away from your family. And look, I'm all for like a hard day's work and
Right,
doing
right,
your job. I'm all for that. But
right.
there's a balance. People have families. You know what I mean? You shouldn't have to put those kind of hours in to make a decent living wage.
You know, and there have been other, and I'll mention this for my wife. My wife belongs to AFSCME, which is the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFSCME, and she belongs to that. And there was a decision that was filed. It was, I don't know if it was, I don't think it made it to the Supreme Court, but it was in a district court that basically said AFSCME workers could not, basically, and they couldn't do what's called a closed shop. Okay. And for those of you who don't know what the term closed shop means, basically is when you get into a certain industry, you have to, you know, part of your wages would go to the union, and you're automatically in the union. My wife gets stuff in the mail all the time from these special interest groups saying, "Hey, you don't have to pay your union dues. You know that could be more money in your pocket." You know, and people like that angers me. You know, we are able to, you know, part of the reason why I'm able to get the old soundboard here. You know, wait a minute, I had to do that. The reason why I'm able to do, you know, gets to my wife makes a good check, you know, and it's because she's rewarded with the fact that she has 25 years of experience. She has the education, she has the training. She's rewarded, you know, and I don't have the school's insurance. That's a joke. You know, the state
Yeah.
insurance, I mean, our school health insurance, and I mean, and it's not because our school's cheap or something. It's just the fact that health insurance is so expensive, and
Oh, it's ridiculous.
the union has fought for my wife to have good medical insurance and to get X amount of sick days and to get X amount of vacation days a month and to, like you said, time with family. You know, we're going on vacation next week. Oh, by the way, before I forget, no podcast next week. I'm on vacation. But point aside, you know, we look at saying, okay, if you didn't have a union to protect us, you know, think about what we couldn't have had without labor unions. I mean,
Oh, God.
you still have 10-year-old kids working in factories. You want to get into a class, you want to read a classic book that'll turn your stomach. Read Upton Sinclair's The
There we go.
Jungle. Read The Jungle. It is a terrible look at the Chicago meatpacking industry at the turn of the century. And Upton Sinclair, actually, it was based upon interviews that he did with meat, you know, meat workers and you know, and these families, these immigrant families, you know, making 10, 15 cents a day, and corporations cutting corners and stuff like that. You know, you wouldn't have a minimum wage if it wasn't for labor union. And so my whole point in saying this is what kind of, and I'll answer this, and then I'll toss it to you, Travis. When you look at what this case could lead to, this decision was absolutely necessary. The court made the right decision. It was, I mean, and with today's court to get an 8-1 decision, that says, hey, both the liberals and the conservatives and the moderates, all three of them, got together and they said, hey, what these guys did was wrong. But you've set a precedence now, and that precedence is saying if the employer can prove in some way, shape, or form that they caused financial damage to that corporation by that union going on strike, then therefore they could take action against that union. I mean, am I seeing that wrong, or how do you see this?
No, that's kind of what I'm seeing. I think there needs to be, I think the reason it's a slippery slope is because there needs to be way more specific guidelines on when a company can sue. Like we need to be more specific on what that means of like if it was the loss of just, hey, the workers weren't there, so you lost like jobs, like, well, that doesn't really make sense because they shouldn't, if these workers just didn't show up for today, then the company doesn't bill
See,
for that day of work, so they
right.
shouldn't have to spend money. So,
But at the same time, they're not making money by having a product out there in the line. If
right.
um,
So just to, I think, okay, so that's where I'm going with this then. So I don't think a company can sue just because like they're not making money because their workers aren't working. I think that's part of the striking agreement. However, this specific incident, if there's a damage, not just because company lost profits because the workers weren't there, but because something happened on the site, like concrete getting left in the trucks or like some type of damage, like actual damage. That's I think that's where they got to find that line, and there needs to be very specific writings to that to protect both parties.
mhm. I
I
th-
think there needs to be more specific details in that agreement, whatever they work out there.
well, and so and the other argument was this: this shouldn't by some of your Democrats who are up on Capitol Hill who said this case shouldn't have seen the light of day in the Supreme Court. That the National Labor Relations Board dropped the ball, totally dropped the ball. This was something, remember, that happened back in 2017, and this is pre-COVID, so this was something that the National Labor Relations Board dropped the ball on, and they should have made the decision right then and there. Hey, what you guys, I mean, find part of the National Labor Relations Board is to say, hey, striking workers, okay, yeah, you have like you said before, you have the right. There's a wrong way, there's a right way and a wrong way of doing this. You guys took the wrong way, and maybe the union should have said, union should have been fined the cost of the concrete for that day, or the cost of the damage to the truck, and that should have been fined to the union. Done and done. And I mean, I think, but now, you get the Supreme Court involved. Now you set a precedent. You set a legal precedent that, and the way that I think that some lawyers can be, and apologies to all of our listeners who are lawyers. I know we have some. I'm sorry, counselor. I know you're watching tonight, but you have some of these lawyers who can twist and bend and manipulate judicial precedent, legal precedent, and say, okay, well, here in and they can go back to this, the Glacier case and say, well, here, this so I mean, they can find some. That's the thing that I'm saying, and I get what you were saying. I get what you were saying there too. Just because you're not making any product doesn't count as financial damage. But I can also see the flip side of that and saying, okay, you can. I mean, in some way, shape, or form, you can say, well, it's damage to our livelihood, or it's damage to the corporation. What happened if what happened if a strike had went on for 6 months? Okay,
Yeah.
and you have, and it's not by any fault of the union, but you have poor management, you have poor financial. If you have a company that has poor financial management or poor leadership at the top, and that company goes belly up, okay, can that company then turn around and say, okay, because of the union going on strike, it caused us to go belly up? That's the kind of situation that I'm afraid of.
But
That's what I'm afraid of seeing.
but something to take into account too with that. So the company's not making money because their workers aren't working. Those workers aren't getting paid either.
True.
So they're feeling the pains of their strike as well.
Hmm.
And that just goes back into the agreement and what the unions decide. It affects both parties, and that's why, unfortunately, sometimes these contracts they get dragged out, and both parties are just
Yeah.
it's tough getting contracts because you want workers to get what they want, but uh, people are greedy. People are
Well,
greedy,
and I and
and
I
sometimes some people it's never enough.
I speak to that time in a timely manner because tomorrow, my wife actually that they have their they have a 4-year contract, and their contract ran out on July or June 30th, and the union has a contract. They're voting on it tomorrow, so my wife actually has to make a special trip to Springfield just to go over to the union hall, read the contract, and then vote on it. So, I mean,
I would
go
I'd
ahead.
like to add while we're on this topic of unions, I would really like to see educators like yourself, like I know it's not easy, but like you guys deserve so much more pay and benefits for what you guys do. I would love to see more action for like getting better contracts for you all and getting what you deserve. Um,
I
but
and
I know
I
I
have
you know this better than I do, so I'm sure there's.
well, let me. I'm glad you brought that up because I
Let
have
me yeah, let me
I
hear
have
your take with that and like the
I
unions
have
with teaching.
I have mixed feelings as an educator. 25 years in education. Um, unions, teacher unions are not allowed per se in the state of Missouri. We're not allowed to go on strike in the state of Missouri. Let's just put it that way. We do what some schools have done, what they call blue days, where a bunch of teachers will call in sick and stuff like that. Um, you know, the teaching profession is, Missouri is, it's either number two or number three worst paid, worst
It's
salary
ridiculous.
in the United States. Okay, Oklahoma, I know for a fact, is number one. Oklahoma teachers, I've watched many. I follow a lot of Oklahoma educators on my Facebook feed who, they constantly, hey, I'm at my side hustle today, or and they show them, this guy during the summertime who does roofing jobs, and or people like myself who do Uber and Lyft. I do DJ. I've been doing DJ. I've been DJing for 20 years on the side. Um, to and it's kind of, and I may be the only one. I, as an educator, may be the only one who's in this feeling this way. A lot of teachers do say, "Hey, we didn't go into it for the money," but at the same time, we shouldn't be treated like slave labor. We put up with pardon my French, but we put up with a lot of shit. We deal with the state mandates. The state sometimes just comes down with some of the craziest ideas down the pike. And then, some school districts, not ours. I'm thankful. We have a great school board. We have great administration at Clopton, that I am so thankful for. But there are some schools that I've heard absolute horror stories that micromanage their teachers to the nth degree. That they don't back up their student. They don't back up their teachers. They throw their teachers under the bus. And so I get where some people believe that teachers need to have a union. At the same time, I don't, and this is probably more me than anybody else. I look at my job with humility and the fact that I don't want to put a student's education, and I'm probably the only one that says this, but I would rather have a student be educated than, at this at and not put their education at risk based upon, you know, if we're arguing over, now if it's a large pay gap, I can see that. But if I'm going to argue over pennies, or over $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 a year, and I've seen this in Illinois countless times. I've seen a lot of Illinois teachers go on strike. You see it. You probably see it more than I do up there in Chicago. But there are, I've seen teacher strikes go for as long as a month and a half, and I think that is, you know, I think that is that's anything that's detrimental to somebody else like that. It's like saying if the police were to go on strike, okay, who's protecting the people? If the police, and police have it a lot rougher than anybody, in my opinion, does. They have the most thankless job out there. But should a police department be allowed to go on strike? What happens to the safety of the citizens when something involves the well-being of somebody else, like an educator, like a firefighter, like a teacher, like a paramedic? You know, I'm kind of in the middle on this, but at the same
I
time,
get that.
but
How do you get what you want then?
see, and so that's where I was going to next. There's no, you can't. I I would like to say in a totally naive world, I would love to say that the board should be able to have foresight and take care of their teachers. You know, where I teach at is the exception to the rule. Okay, the rule in a lot of, especially in rural education, the rule is, you know, well, we have limited tax base and we have limited this and we have limited that and we have to, you know, with who we've had come on board, the last group of administrators that we had two interims last year and we had a new administrator this year, and they both said, okay, we've got to right this ship. You know, first of all, I think at the top, it takes, you know, and this goes for police, this goes for fire, this goes for paramedic, this goes for education. You have got to have good administration at the top. You've got to be able to have an administrator who says, okay, what do my people need? What do my people need? What do I need? You know, we have so many teachers who are leaving the industry right now for this very reason. Because health insurance is a joke. Like I said earlier, health insurance is a joke. And, you know, I people who I work with, to tell you the truth, I don't even know what I stopped listening when the deductible was like $2,000. A $2,000 deductible for a procedure. Okay? And if you're if you're not an administrator, or you're not even, there's not a lot of us who have $2,000 lying around. Okay? So you've got, you know, our health insurance is a joke. How, you know, if I'm an administrator, you know, then I say, okay, how can I protect my teachers? How can I, you know, we have to be able to find a balance, you know. And our buddy Colby Coleman, he's actually a teacher himself, and he's saying here he says, you know, that Missouri does have, you're right, Colby, Missouri does have one of the best retirements in the nation. We do have a great retirement system. You know, and he says you can make good money in teaching. But for some people, you know, their alternative is move. Okay. But right now with what we have, and we have a severe teaching shortage right now. We have a severe teaching shortage. We know of a lot of schools. Last year, I forgot what I'm not even going to throw a number out there, but I knew it was in Houston, Texas. They had a crazy amount of, and I'm talking like thousands of teachers in the Houston Unified School District, that they had thousands of teaching positions that they didn't fill. Here in Louisiana, I know for a fact that there are 5 teaching positions that they do not have filled right now. And what they're looking at doing, is, okay, we're going to cut this class, this class, this class, and this class. And so what ends up happening then is now you're affecting the education of kids because you're not taking care of your teachers. So in the end, our end product that you're going to have is going to be a poor educational system. At the cost.
But on that token, if people are quitting, they need to recognize that and see the problem
Oh,
and
I
say,
agree.
okay,
I agree.
obviously people are leaving for a reason. We should change this.
Right.
But it doesn't seem like there's any, like, you're more in the loop than I am on it. But from the outside perspective, it doesn't seem like there is any real change happening for educators.
But when you look at funding for education is one of the, when you look at areas that, and this kind of goes into what we're going to talk about.
This is perfect.
But you know, when you talk about the cost of, and when we talk about the cost of education going up, secondary education, and I found this fact to be, and this is the same thing for college professors, that college professors since 1970, in a survey that was done, you take into consideration inflation and all this other stuff, college professors haven't really increased in their amount of pay. Okay, now who has gotten who? Do you know who's getting paid more in education now more than anybody else? And that's administration. Okay, and in some districts that that can be good, and in some instances that can be bad. In our case, we have great administrators. We take care of our administrators. Bowling Green, Missouri takes care of their administrators. And I point out that Clopton and Bowling Green. I'm biased to these two schools, but you look at these two schools. You start at the top. They've got great administration. What do? They take care of their teachers. They take care of, we got a modest pay raise this year. It wasn't through the roof, but at the same time, but yet you have some of these schools you have some schools that are led by these, superintendents who are in their late 20s, early 30s. Okay.
It's insane.
And, who may have, they may have 7 or 8 years in the classroom, but you translate that over into an administrative position. Now what you have is you have a company run, in my opinion, by an educational rookie. And you're seeing this across the board in other industries as well. So, I think part of the reason is, people are wanting to make money, and this can, like I said, this goes into just about any industry that you want to. And so you may have people who are educationally qualified, but maybe not experience qualified.
Well, I would say too, time in isn't always the best indicator of someone for the job.
Mm-mm.
And I can speak on that in my trade. There's guys that have been in 20 years in this trade, and they're absolute garbage at what they do.
And I agree with that too. I agree with that too. I think that this is going to be a problem that continues on. And I mean, while we're talking about this, let's go ahead and move into this next topic. I mean, which is this Supreme Court this other case that the Supreme Court Biden versus Nebraska. This was again part of that week. This was on June the 30th, where the Supreme Court handed, basically Joe Biden had a plan that was in place to cancel $430 billion in student loan debt. Okay. And this was believed that this would probably benefit, by some estimates, 43 million Americans. And of course, this case was more done on party lines. So this was a 6-3 decision. This was the conservative moderate judges versus the liberal judges. Okay. And this was the court had sided with the 6 conservative. This was a lawsuit that was brought by Arkansas, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, and Nebraska, and South Carolina, all of which happen to be red states. They objected to this is from Reuters I'm reading, objected to Biden's student loan forgiveness. It's a ruling that dealt a death blow to the 26 million borrowers who applied for relief after Biden announced the plan in August 2022, which has kind of been a setback for the Biden administration. Now, for those of you, and I'm sure this affects a lot of you who are listening tonight or are going to be listening later on, was it during COVID that they they suspended loan payments, and that is set to expire, I believe, in October of this year. I believe is when that is set to expire. I saw that. I think I saw it somewhere, but basically,
September 1st.
Oh, so it's September. Okay, so it's September 1st, not October. Okay, and Biden, here, and this is one that I'll step on. I'm kind of 60-40 on this, and I'm actually surprisingly, the 60% more on the student debt side, because of the fact that my generation, so my generation says, well, we took out our college loans and we, we paid them off, and we did our part. Pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. Okay, that was also in a time when education was a lot less, and it was college education. My days was. I've got a video somewhere. I've got to find this video. I have it somewhere at school that I took a video of. We had probably the most, at least at Hannibal LaGrange, and Janine and I were talking about this before the show. We probably had the least frills university that you could go to. There wasn't, okay, we have the vegan meal plan, and we have the gluten free meal plan, and you had the meal plan, okay. And you couldn't, okay, well, you can use your meal credits at the student union, or you could use, and we didn't have, and our student union was, I can tell you what our student union was. We had 2 pool tables, a pinball machine, a video game, and a ping pong table. That was our student union. And now you have student unions that have, rock climbing walls, and you have, bowling alleys and roller skating rinks and blah, blah, blah. Part of the reason why education has went up so much is because, and we didn't, and of course we didn't have, if we had internet in our dorm rooms, and mind you, again, 1992 to 1996 was the infancy of the internet. I had a buddy who got one of those. I'm dating myself when I say this, but he had a CD-ROM of a AOL America. It was AOL American Online. You get like 30 free hours of internet, and you installed the software on your computer, and you had the modem, and you dial in, and and you had all that stuff, and we were wanting to download. I'm a huge Black Crowes fan, and the Black Crowes new album came out, and it took 30 minutes to download one song, and we're like, oh, we're listening to the new Black Crowes song, But now you have dorms that have, high-speed internet, that have, ground source heat pump. And I'm not, that's, we had radiator heat, and we had window units, and we had our
giant fitness wellness centers.
Right, giant, and so, and
which isn't a bad thing. I'm for it, but
right.
Get to what you're saying.
But the thing is, okay,
comes at a cost.
Right. So your 3 most expensive, and I looked this up, and this was in that thing. The 3 most expensive colleges in the United States, and I wouldn't have guessed this: Columbia, Vassar, and Duke will run you $50K a year. Now that's just tuition.
Now, isn't Columbia private?
Yes, these Columbia, Columbia and
Are they all private?
I don't know about
Duke.
I think Duke's public, but Columbia and Vassar are private. Okay, and so when you look at a report, and this was, I'll just read a few things here, a few facts that I found in my research today. That the tuition for public colleges, this isn't private colleges, public colleges alone, tuition has quadrupled between 1980 and 2015. Okay, quadrupled.
Believe it.
According to CNBC, college tuition was far more affordable for older generations, citing figures from the College Board. This is the people who put the ACT together and everything. That adjusting for inflation, the cost of private schools rose by 129% since 1980s. The cost of public school rose by 213%. Okay, let that just sink in just for a second. Okay, your students graduate with an average of 37,000, a little bit over $37,000 in debt. Okay, that's just the average. All right. And that amounts to $1.5 trillion in collective student loan debt amongst 44 million Americans. All right. So, like we said, amenities thing was one thing. Administrative salaries. Now, this was another thing, and we talked about University of California education system last week. Where was my? Okay, so the University of California education system, which is UCLA, UC Berkeley, UC San Diego. Okay, so between 19 this was I thought this was something. Between 1975 and 2008, the number of faculty that the California university system had went from in 1975 was 11,614 to 12,019 by 2008. However, in sharp contrast, the number of administrators grew from 3,800 to 12,183. Okay,
A lot of employees.
that's an increase. That's just administrators. Okay, now and the other thing that said that was where was that other fact at was by students. Then the cost for these administrators out of every cost of the student per year, $23,000 per student is going to pay for these administrators. Okay, so that's where $23,000 of that is going to. And as I said before, I stated earlier that they said, that it said professor salaries have barely budged since 1970. Now, again, you account for inflation and everything else. And a lot of these professors today, and you will see this at universities, especially these bigger ones. Some of these universities are using what are called graduate assistants, who are teaching. They're working on their master's degree, or they're working on their doctorate degree, and they're teaching these courses. They have a lot of part-time adjunct professors. Okay, where I went to school, even back in the 90s, where I went to school at Hannibal LaGrange, a number of my professors were also teaching school. My methods of teaching track or methods of coaching track and field professor was Hannibal High's head track coach, and he would teach us. We would have for the semester we would have 9 weeks in class, and then when track season kicked in, we had 9 weeks out on the field with him. And I know he said, he told us, and this is back in the 90s, I make more coaching track than I do teaching this class. Okay, so he was making more as a head track. Now, granted, it was Hannibal High School, but still, you're paying for this guy to educate, and to me, that there's things wrong, and so when I started doing this, and I'll admit, before I started doing my research, I was like, well, you take out a loan, you better be able to pay but the demand for education too is this, and you're a perfect example of this. You don't have to go to a 4-year university to get a good paying job or a decent paying job. You have the skills, and we've had Martin Hanley on here many times, and he is.
You don't have to, but the counter to that, I would say, and I'm all for blue collar jobs, by the way, but
Right.
not everyone's cut out for it, and not everyone wants to do that.
Right.
And so you have to take that into account too. There are opportunities there, but not everyone wants to be a plumber. You know what I mean? Even if it does pay $60, $70 an hour.
Well, and so that was another thing. Another study that was done by Business Insider magazine said, according to the Department of Education, U.S. colleges expected a total of 20.4 million students in the fall of 2017, about 5.1 million more than in the fall of 2000. Now, that's good. There's a higher demand for education, but on the flip side of that, the return on that investment has fallen because 40% of the kids don't 40% of that 20.4 million didn't graduate. Okay?
Happens a lot.
And so what you then have is, either, and I had a large number of my friends who I maintain friendships even with now who didn't graduate college because it wasn't that they couldn't hack it, it was because they couldn't afford it. And that was even back in the 90s, they couldn't afford it, And so why, and the other question is this, and this is what a lot of people are attacking. Okay, so why should we do debt forgiveness in the first place? And one of the biggest thing that came out of this, look at where we're at right now. Because we are in a we're in high inflationary times right now. All right. When you look at the cost of goods going up and wages are not matching profits of the big business, your standard wages. Now, like we talked about unions earlier, but those who are in non-union jobs, their wages are not keeping up. And so you have these people who are paying student loans and not able to, okay, so I've got to either pay for my however much my college loan is, or my federally financed college loan, or I'm paying for necessities.
Yeah, there's a few issues I see with this, and I want to start out by saying our conversation with Alex the other day kind of changed my perspective a little bit on this, and I've been thinking a lot about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so to start off, we're looking at you got a number of 1.5 trillion. I saw 1.75 trillion. Either
Mm-hmm.
way, it's a lot of
It's a
money.
lot of money.
And just to read this article here I pulled up, this was a February 12th, 2023. U.S. leads the rest of the world with 196 billion given to Ukraine with war with Russia. So I look at that and then I see people who are struggling to pay their loans. And it's like, well, if the U.S. is so willing to spend 200 billion on a war that a lot of Americans are really starting to turn their back on, why can't we help our own people on that token? However, another issue I see with that too is like, if you're going to pay some of them, you got to pay all of them,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
It can't just be a benefit for some, like, okay, that's it. Because, sure, we could pay all off that debt. That next semester is going to come. That next
Right.
year of students is going to come,
Right.
and there's going to be more
Right.
student loans. And we're going to be right back where we were before. So I could see the idea. I 100% saw Alex's point of like, if you freed up that debt from people, it would give people more opportunities to invest in the economy, buy homes, go to stores and spend more money. I can see that argument, but I see it as such. I don't see it as a long-term solution, though. I mean, I think if we could figure out a way to reallocate funds to help people make education more affordable, which I mean,
What
how we do that, I don't know. We haven't had a balance. We've talked this before. We haven't had a balanced budget, and
forever
how long? I know you know that.
since
Yeah, it's been
'90s?
forever.
Why?
Yeah,
Why? Okay. Here's some, and this is another point and this is just I don't have an answer for this question, but why is it then that we can give a community college education relatively now community college relatively inexpensive, but you come out with an associate's degree. I hate to tell them, there's not a ton you can do with an associate's degree. That's
I
going
have one, and it has done literally nothing for me.
right. Okay.
It's done nothing for me.
So, and community college, for those of you who've been to community college, and not outing anybody who's, I know a lot of students who use community college just to get their gen eds out of the way and then go on to,
Smart move.
right, and it's a great move. Why can't you create a no frills university like a community college, but in a 4-year sense, and still get the bang for your buck as far as being, if you're saying, hey, it's an accredited university, it's an accredited college. Okay,
We're starting to see some of that, but not to the extent it should be.
right. I mean, I'm looking right now. I've got in my office right here. I've got my 2 degrees up on the wall. Okay, got my master's and I've got my bachelor's. Okay, and I got my master's from Hannibal LaGrange College, and I got I got my bachelor's from Hannibal LaGrange. I got my master's from Southwest Baptist University. And to me, in education, it's not really worth the paper that it's printed on. I mean, part of the reason why I make the salary that I make is based upon my number of years of experience. You know, when you put me down, okay, I've got a guy with a degree from Truman. I've got a guy with a degree from Hannibal LaGrange. I've got a guy with a degree from Mizzou. You know, a lot of it and especially in education, as long as you got a degree in education, they don't really care where it's from. I mean, now if you're
Course,
if you're
yeah.
now if you're going to go now if you're going to go teach in like a prep school, or you're going to go teach in a like a high dollar,
Of course, then it's different.
then they're going to say, okay, hey, we want a guy who was put through the ringer, and and not to say that, I mean, you know, I I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. Okay, I'll admit that. But hard work, and for what I've done, I try to be the best teacher that I can possibly be. You can have a Harvard education, you can still be dumb as a rock. My point is this: what are we really paying for? Is the quality of education different in a 30,000? What are you paying for? What am I paying for with a Hannibal Lagrange degree versus a Duke degree? The fact that I went
And
that I went to Duke. I mean,
yeah,
I'm
it's
taught
it's just a
I'm taught a lot of the same stuff. I mean, I teach with teachers from that have went to school in a lot of different schools throughout Missouri and Illinois. You know, and when we'll sit around, we'll tell stories about, oh, hey man, I had this in my philosophy of education class, and blah blah. Oh yeah, I had to do something like, and we tell the same stories. We tell the same stories. We tell the same stuff because we have the same experiences in our education because we were taught the same things.
mhm.
You know, and some of us went to a higher price college. We have there at Clopton. There's a lot of teachers who went to Mizzou, and I can guarantee you Mizzou is a lot cheaper than HLG was. And
Yeah.
what did I gain by going to a higher? It
I think it's all branding. It's like, do
Yeah,
you want the Timex or you want the Rolex? They both tell the
exactly,
time, you
exactly.
know?
You want to drive the
Just one's
Cadillac or
deemed
the
more
right,
worth than the other one, you know?
right,
It's all branding.
right.
I got one more thing I want to say, and I'm gonna end it for
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
We've had multiple generations growing up to believe that college was the option.
Mm-hmm.
It's no question of it. I grew up, I got all the colleges came in today. There was the college fairs, like giving you the pamphlets, telling you to come, like, come on, apply for your loans. It was so pushed on us. And it wasn't just my class, multiple classes for years and years and years. This has been going on, hence why we're 1.75 trillion in
Right,
student loan debt.
right.
We've pushed this so much on people. And some industries and some jobs, 100%, you do need a college degree. Like some of those like specialized healthcare jobs, like stuff like what our friends Spencer and Devin do in the healthcare industry, 100% I see that you need a degree for something like that. Totally get it. But there's a lot of people that were pushed and led to believe that if they got these degrees and God only knows whatever you call the degree, like, you always people talk trash on your liberal arts degrees, but I'll use it as an example. Like your liberal arts degrees are like your more broad spectrum degrees, I guess you could say, your less specialized stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You pushing on these people that I think a majority don't really know what they want to do in the first place, but they're promised that if they get this degree, it's going to lead to a better life. Oh, by the way, to get this degree, we need money.
Mm-hmm.
And if unless you're fortunate enough to come from a rich family, you're taking out loans to do that, and you're looking at, we already said tuition rates, but let's just say $20,000 a year for a year degree, $80,000, give or take. That's a lot of money for someone who's potentially 22, 23 years old, went to college immediately after high school, and now they got all this debt. And it's like, okay, go get them. And it's like,
Yeah.
but
No,
where's
no career
what do I
placement
do
or
with
anything.
this?
Right. No career
I
placement or
worked
anything.
at Whole Foods for 3 months, and there was quite a few people who were college graduates working at Whole Foods. They
Jeez.
they have all these student loan debts, but they're working at Whole Foods because they couldn't get the job they want. That's a real thing people face, and I can sympathize with those people because of the fact that I grew up and it was pushed on me.
Mm-hmm.
And I did go to college for a year, not having any idea what I wanted to do because God forbid you joined the military or you joined a labor union because it
Right.
was it was seen as, it wasn't said, but for me it felt like that was such a frowned upon thing to do that I was a failure for doing those things, which in hindsight it wasn't. But that's at the time that's how it was. I know other kids feel that way. I know that it's pushed on them. You don't see your labor unions or even hell, you don't even see companies going to high schools like recruiting. You don't see that. You only see, I mean, you see military, of course, but
Right.
again, like people looked at military as like, oh, that's just
No,
for the
you're
kids
too
that just
dumb
couldn't cut it for
too dumb to go
college,
to
or
college. Go to
too
yeah.
dumb or too
Right.
poor, and
Right.
I think it's one of the best decisions you can make. But my
Right.
point being is that we kind of put ourselves in this position by leading on generation after generation, telling them that, oh, you can be all this if you go and do this thing. and this is the result we have. And we wonder why people feel like they got duped. I mean, I don't know. I sympathize with those people. At the same time, it's again, it's like if you can't just help some and not help all.
Right.
So
Right.
it's a very complex issue.
It is.
I really do sympathize for those people. I couldn't imagine having some of the student loans some people have, especially at the ages they have to deal with them. But at the same time, you have to know what you're signing up for. And
Right.
if you're a parent you really gotta,
You've
I
got to
wish parents
educate.
would educate themselves more on
Yes.
that too. And
Yeah.
parents
That
push their kids to do it as well. And it's like,
there needs to
why would
be.
you want that for your kid? Like, if you know you can't financially support your kid to go to college, why would you push that on them unless they 100% wanted to go be this big doctor or something
Right.
and make this? Why would you push that on them?
And I think that there has to be, and it's, again, your strict red state conservatives are going to say, well, I didn't want to buy my $30,000 $80,000 truck, and I'd still take out my loan. Do I get that forgiven? You can't. You This
Totally
is
different.
right.
That's
You're
not a
talking apples, and
argument.
you're talking apples and oranges here, and so I think that there has to be some accountability. I mean, and I can still remember in my mind going in. So I signed up. I can't remember what the name of the loan. I got Pell Grants, which were that was money from the government that didn't have to be paid back. I can't think of the name of the loan. Oh, but there was an abbreviation, and so here I am, an 18-year old kid. Okay, and technically I was 17 when I signed up for college, and when I go in, I sign this contract, and I look, and there's this legalese that's a paragraph this long, and just sign down here at the bottom so you can get your money. Well, nothing was explained to me.
No.
They're just like saying, okay, hey, after you graduate, you're gonna have a 6 month, you're gonna have your 6 months, you'll have your 6 months grace period. So basically, we're giving you 6 months to find a job, and then after that 6 months, you're gonna start paying. You know, I'm totally this has been one of those discussions that when I look at it, I'm like, I can honestly say I was one way coming into this before we researched this, and I totally had my tables turned after looking at a lot of this stuff. And is debt forgiveness the way? Like you said, Travis, and I totally agree with that. You can't, if we just say, okay, we're going to forgive this debt, okay, what about then this next generation that's going to come in and accrue more debt? What are we going to do about that? So we're not really it's a temporary fix to a big problem. So you eliminate that debt, but then you're going to have this whole thing, just bunch back up in a matter of 20 years.
Yeah, you're talking about, 1.75 trillion. What happens if everyone defaults on that debt?
Right, right,
That's a lot. Now we're
right.
talking like the '08 because given mortgages to everybody, which I'm not going to go too into that because that could be a whole nother topic of
Yep.
student loans to people disadvantaged. But it is a very complex issue, and yeah, I could talk about this more
Yeah.
and more. I
Well,
really do
and
get fired up talking about this.
thank you for everybody who got on tonight. I know we got on earlier tonight. So those of you who are just now, I see a lot of folks who are getting on just now. Like, hey, what are they doing on? You guys aren't in. We did get on a little bit earlier tonight, but I do want to point out we had a number of new listeners who commented tonight. I just want to welcome Steel City Champ 43. Thank you for joining us tonight. Our buddy Travis Pruitt was on here tonight.
Nice.
Giuseppe Arellana. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Thank you for your comments tonight. Colby, it's always great to have you on. Heather McAlone, thank you for joining in. And the counselor himself, Alex Ellison, it says right now on my board, Alex Ellison is watching. We are sorry, counselor, that we started past your kids, earlier than your kid's bedtime, but you'll have to go back and click on the live a little bit later on. But again, thank you for everybody. Hey, wait a minute. Thank you for everybody who joined tonight, and we had a just great discussion tonight. Again, be a friend, tell a friend, share, 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 share. If you have a TikTok account, please go over. You see it scrolling on the bottom of the screen right now. You see where our TikTok at VOR Podcast 2021. I'm kind of gonna. I usually post it on my TikTok too. I'm going to kind of cut back from that and try to put more attention over to our Voice of Reason podcast on TikTok. We want to get 1,000 followers by the end of the year. We are a long way from that, and so please, please, please join us on TikTok.
Send us topic ideas too, please.
Yes, please. We always come up with, this has been some good stuff, but if there's stuff that you want us to talk about, MK, yes, MK Ultra, yes, we will get to the MK, yes.
Ooh, okay.
Always MK Ultra. There's always somebody who says MK Ultra. Yes, we will. Sean, if Sean was here, he would be his shorts would be getting moist right now. So, yes. So again, thanks to our good luck to our brother.
Yeah, heavy one.
Yeah, our good luck to our brother Sean this evening, and hopefully Tony's popping that baby out right now. But thanks for joining us this week. Join us next week, or actually, don't join us next week, because next week we're taking a week off, taking summer vacation. We will see you guys in 2 weeks. Thanks for joining us tonight on The Voice of Reason.